All right, I'm going to start with my intro here, and then hopefully anyone coming in a little late is just missing me. But like I said, it's a shorter session, so I want to make sure we get through all of the content. I'm happy to see some people saying hello in the chat. That's great. So I'm going to say hi too. My name is Sarah Mayu. I work here at Temple University Small Business Development Center. And for those of you that are new to the Temple SBDC, we're actually part of a nationally accredited network of over 1,000 small business development centers that are funded by the federal government, the Small Business Administration, and then each SBDC is also funded at the state level and hosted at local universities. So I'm here at Temple SBDC, so we're at Temple University, and we cover Philadelphia, Eastern Montgomery, and Lower Bucks County, but there are actually 16 small business development centers in the state of Pennsylvania. And since we're offering this virtually, you might be joining us from Scranton, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, wherever you are. We were happy to have you on with us today to learn a little bit more about the legal considerations you should be taking as a small business, right? We're going to really hone in on contracts today. With that said, this is going to be recorded, and you will get a copy of the PowerPoint and the recording in a follow-up email within 2 to 3 business days. And our guest speaker, Janelle, has also generously put together a little handout that you will be able to utilize as you work through navigating contracts. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let Janelle introduce herself.
Thank you so much. So my name is Janelle Peyton, and I am the owner, CEO, and managing partner of Peyton Law. We just rebranded, so it used to be Snyder Law, and now we're Peyton Law, which corresponds with my name, so it makes it a little bit more straightforward. And what we are going to talk about today is contracts. So I've been an attorney for almost 20 years now. I know I'm dating myself. And I've been in business for myself for 6, going on 7 of those. So I have been dealing with contracts from the legal point of view, but also from the business point of view as well. And hopefully we can spend the next, few minutes really getting into some nitty gritty stuff that'll help you guys out as small business owners as well. As just a little bit more about me, I mentioned I've been working with contracts for a long time because I was a business owner before I was an attorney. So what I was in the construction business, we did millwork installation, and it was a great business. I had a lot of fun in it. But one thing that we did a little bit differently is that we really focused on when we were hired to do projects, and we did commercial work. If you're in this business, you know that you don't get paid for quite some time when you're doing commercial work. So what we did was in our contracts, we put in there a request to be able to bill 15% upfront for management and preparation fees, which in our case was a lot of management, but it was also, we were installing woodwork. So a lot of it was, making sure our equipment was ready to go, making sure we had enough fasteners. So the nuts and bolts and nails and all of that, the glue and all of that. So what happened was people were fine giving that to us. And that is a great example of, a way to use a contract to help your business flow a little bit better. We knew that 15% upfront was going to help us out a lot, and it did. It made it very easy to hit payroll, even though we were in the middle of a project and we couldn't collect final payments. So the moral of the story today is contracts are very important, and they are a tool, so you can use them to your benefit. So with that, we'll jump right in. Hopefully we'll jump right in. There we go. All right, so the goal today, I have 3 topics that I want to touch on with you guys. Terms and conditions, drafting agreements, and breach of contract. So terms and conditions, I'm sort of focusing on contracts that will come across your desk. Drafting agreements is when you are drafting the agreement. And then breach of contract, what happens if something goes wrong? So those are kind of our main topics for today. So first one, terms and conditions. So what I like to do is ask you guys a little question so you can test your knowledge, and then we'll go from there. So this question is, you can change pre-printed terms and conditions, true or false? And you've all seen them. It's the back side of that form that has all the little tiny print, or maybe online now it's the button you click that says, I accept the terms and conditions. What do you think? Can you change those or no? True or false? And I'll give you guys a second to think about that.
All right, 2 people have said true so far, and 2 people have said false. So we're pretty.
All right, let's see. True. So, and the people who said false might be right as well, because there's a difference here. A lot of times you think about that in terms of consumer contracts. So obviously we're here because we're business owners and we're looking at figuring out the business piece of things. So in the consumer world, just for comparison's sake, in the consumer world, and I will be the first to admit, I just bought my son his first phone. So I had to buy a phone number and I bought the phone for him, and I'm an attorney. And did I read the agreements that I signed? No, I didn't. And the reason I didn't is A, because who has time to do that? But B, those were consumer contracts. So we have consumer laws that protect the consumers. So when we come across a consumer contract like that, that really there is no negotiating, because you're dealing with, I have AT&T. So that is, I'm not going to call up AT&T and be like, clause number 3 in line 395, I don't agree with, can we redline that? It's just not going to happen. And we know that as attorneys, and the law knows that as well. So there are very strong laws written to benefit the consumer. So if you're signing a consumer contract and it's got like thousands of pages of terms and conditions, that's different than your business life. So now we're in the business world, business contracts. There's nothing to protect you from signing away whatever it is as a business owner or as a business. So when you are signing a business contract or agreement, you've got to read it. You always have to read it, or have someone on your behalf read it. You have to know what you're signing. So this happens anytime you put pen to paper, and anytime that not anytime, but many times when you're making a purchase. Because I know a lot of contracts and a lot of things that you're agreeing to are now online. So it makes it a bit more confusing. It's not as easy as here's a physical contract on my desk, I have to look at this, or here's an email with an attachment, more physical looking thing to review. So keep that in mind. Consumer world is a different story. Business world, you are responsible. The judge or the jury or whoever is looking at this in the future, which hopefully we never get there, they are going to look at you and say, you read this, so you agreed to this. So there is no excuse of, I didn't see that, or I didn't read that, or I didn't know. That exists only in consumer law, not in business law. So just want to be clear with that. Another thing to think about is just the uses of contracts. I gave a little story in the beginning of how I used a contract to help me with cash flow and help me, make sure I can make payroll all the time. But contracts are very important for a lot of different reasons. One of it is that one might be the payment terms. It's very different, especially in small business, if you get paid in 15 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Those terms can make or break a business. Another thing to think about is all the different types of contracts that we have. There are, client-facing contracts. So those are, if you are providing a service to somebody, what are they signing off on to get from you? There's vendor contracts. If you need to order supplies, those are coming from your vendors. Those are contracts and agreements that you have with them. You've got agreements with your employees sometimes, or your independent contractors if you're using them. And then there's also the whole real estate piece of this, which is, real property or leases, commercial leases, things like that. Those are all agreements. Anytime you're signing something, you need to take a second look at that and go, okay, before I sign, what am I signing? Make sure I agree with what is in here. So I'll pause there and see if anyone has questions just about the basics of contracts. And Sarah, if you'd see if there's any questions for me.
We do have one, and I think you might get to this later on, but someone said, is there a resource of templates to help you create contracts?
So there is. Well, there's not Google. Let's wait and answer that in a little bit because I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. All right. Second thing we're going to talk about is drafting agreements, and we'll get into this a little bit more here. So question is, business owners can write their own contracts, true or false? Let's see what you guys come up with here.
All right, they all seem to be in agreement on true, so we'll see.
So we got a bunch of smart people in this group. I love it. Yes, sometimes I get people tripped up on this because they think, oh no, my attorney has to write a contract. They don't. Business owners can write their own contracts. Absolutely. Now, whether or not they should, or whether or not they really want to, is the question that we need to ask. And when I work with clients, I tell them that every contract is one part business and one part legal. So what I mean by that is one part of, or one half of any contract, and obviously it's not exactly half, but half of any contract is the terms of the agreement itself. So who is doing what for who, when, or delivering what, or buying what are the terms? Are you taking checks? Are you taking cash? Are you paying in on delivery? Are you paying 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? So one part of every contract is the business of the contract itself. And those terms, I tell my clients, that's up to you to tell me. I'm happy to give you advice or tell you, what I see generally in your industry, but that piece is up to you. And for example, if I'm reviewing a contract for a client, I will say to them, hey, these are the terms. Are you okay with these? Do you need me to change anything? These are the, this is what your services you're providing. Is this specific enough? Do you understand it? Does the other party understand it? Are you going to be able to work together? And if there's a question that comes up, will this pretty much answer it? Because the worst thing you can do is have a very vague contract, and then it just creates confusion. And really what we want is we want a good, solid business relationship first. And then we want to document what that relationship is supposed to look like. So if anything goes wrong, we can refer back to the document and hopefully everyone can agree. Oh yeah, that's right. I was supposed to pay you in 90 days. Let me get that paid. Or, oh, that's right. You said you were providing this service, but not that service. So I'm sorry, I didn't realize. And that happens all the time. And that's really what we're trying to do. I don't do litigation, so I am trying my best to keep you out of court. I feel like my job is to keep you out of court. If I can do that with a good, solid contract, I absolutely will. The other part of that, I say, is one part legal. So the legal part are the warranties, the disclaimers, the indemnities, all of the, what law controls this contract. So I work with clients across the nation. The type of work that I do, because I don't do litigation, I can help people start entities, work on contracts, do their intellectual property all over the nation. So I might have a client with a Delaware corporation conducting business in Pennsylvania. Do we want that contract to be bound by Pennsylvania law or Delaware law? We specify that in the contract, and maybe it's better for one, maybe it's better for the other. Maybe we say it has to be in the southeastern district of Pennsylvania because they don't want to travel to northwestern Pennsylvania because they don't have any business out there. Indemnities are, what happens if something goes wrong? Who's paying for it? What if it's a license or some kind of intellectual property agreement and it gets out, or it's a trade secret and it gets out? What happens? Who has to pay for that? Who has to pay the attorney's fees for that? Are there warranties? Are there disclaimers? Is there anything here that we're not accepting liability for? So that I kind of bundle up into what I call the legal part. And that's the part for me to really understand and for me to help you understand. So I work for businesses that are all the way from startups up to they're large enough to hire their own in-house counsel. I'm that in-between person. So that's a pretty big range. So I have small businesses that are just starting that want very simple contracts because they want to work with a client and they want to be able to get those clients onboarded very quickly. So they want a 1 or 2 page agreement that's very simple, that's worded in plain English that everyone can understand, and that business owner can show the client or the potential client and say, look, part 1 is what I'm going to do for you. Part 2 is what you're going to pay. And part 3 is the legal stuff. This means, if something goes wrong, we're keeping it in Pennsylvania, where XYZ, whatever. And that's huge for a small business owner to be able to start up and just be very confident in their sales process as they're figuring out, and confident in their contract process as well. But then on the other hand, I have clients that are starting to negotiate, like they're getting bigger and they're starting to negotiate with Fortune 500 companies. They cannot provide a contract that's like 1 or 2 pages and written in plain English to, Johnson & Johnson or whoever they're trying to work with. So in that situation, which in that case, Johnson & Johnson probably has their own contract that they're making you use. But in that case, they need something that's a lot more solid and a bit more legal, because if the other side's legal department is going to look at this, if it's a little 1 or 2 page, they're just going to throw it out and say, forget this. But if it's a legitimate contract, it doesn't have to be like 1,000 pages, but let's say it's a 10-page agreement. They have something to review and they can come back and say, okay, yes, we agree with this, this, and this, but we needed you to change that and that, or maybe we need you to increase your insurance or something like that. So as your business grows, your contracts grow. So a lot of times you will start out with whatever you can, and then you will have someone like me come in and help you kind of draft your first real set of contracts. And then, depending upon how fast you grow, it might be a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, we're looking at them again because you've grown and now you're dealing with different clients or a different type of client, or you've launched a new product or service and now you need more contracts or different contracts for that particular product or service. So, getting into templates and that question, I never fault people for starting from scratch. I started from scratch. I understand you have to do what you have to do. As an attorney, I can never tell you that it's a good idea to draft your own contracts because you haven't been to law school, so you probably don't know all the nuances of the legal side of it. The business side, you know better than I do, and I'm not going to pretend that you don't because it's your business. You know more about it than anyone. But the legal side is where you can get yourself in trouble. And that's where I recommend that you find an attorney that you like, that you can have a good conversation with, and make sure that they understand your business so that they can help you figure out what that business side of the agreements are, but can also put the legal side in place for you, because you don't want to miss those important things. Because unfortunately, I've seen people go out of business because of a bad contract. I had a client come to me once who we tried to renegotiate a contract where he agreed to, it was like a 180-day payment structure. And he was a small business. He didn't have the capital to front the bill that long. And he signed the agreement, didn't read it, found out it was 180-day payment terms, and it honestly put him out of business. So I never want to see that happen. I don't want to see that to happen to any of you. And I'm sure it won't, because you're watching this, so you're smarter than the average bear. But keep that in mind. I'm never going to fault you for that, but it's a good idea to have someone with the experience on the legal side really help put it together for you. So I'll take a sip of water there and see if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, I mean, that was really great. Thanks, Janelle. I see someone in the chat was saying they were having issues seeing the PowerPoint. I did put that out to the entire audience. So if someone else is having issues, let me know. And then someone did say, can we talk a little bit more about drafting? Or we're on drafting agreements. Yeah. So, okay, maybe that's just Laura. Keep messaging me offline. I think she might be having some confusion over here, but hopefully I can get that resolved. And then that was it for now. So thank you for, addressing that question about resource templates. And I think we are good to keep going.
All right. And we'll have some time at the end too, if we have any other questions. All right. So next section is breach of contract. So this is what happens if something goes wrong. And my question for you here is, once an agreement is signed, you must honor and uphold it. True or false?
We have a lot of true in the chat.
Then I can say confidently that we have some good people in this group. The answer here is kind of, it depends. So yes, you are signing this agreement because you intend to honor and uphold it. The first thing I'll say here, though, is that an agreement and a contract, no matter how ironclad it is, it's between you and another person, another business. So you have to know first and foremost that that is a business or a person that you want to do business with. So I have had people come to me and say, look, I don't really trust this person. That's why I need you to write an ironclad contract. And I say to them, if you don't trust them, you should not be doing business with them. And a contract is not going to help make the not going to help. How do I word that? If it's going to go bad, it's going to go bad, whether you have a contract or not. So, so don't rely on the contract to make a untrustworthy situation trustworthy. It isn't going to happen. And you know that as a business owner, but sometimes it's good to hear it. That's the truth. So yes, once you sign the agreement and the other party signs the agreement, you are both supposed to honor and uphold your side of the bargain. They won't always do that, which is why I just talked about what I just talked about. You, of course, everybody said yes here, so you guys are all good people. I would do business with any of you any day. And I feel the same way myself. But there are times when the agreement just isn't working. And I'll tell you a story. I'm sure he won't mind me telling you this, and I won't use his name, but this just came across my desk last week. A client of mine has been a client for years, actually one of my first clients, great guy. He owns a storage facility, and he decided that he was going to start providing the on-demand storage containers, the kind they drop off at your house, and then you can fill it whenever you feel like it and either leave it there because you're doing a renovation project, or if you're getting ready to move, you can have it shipped to wherever you're moving it to. So he thought, hey, these would be great. These would help my main business. This is kind of like a side stream of income. This will be perfect. So he found a franchise that does this. So they already have the branding and they already have the containers and the trailers and everything that's needed. So you're supposed to be able to sign up and pretty much, get the whole package. So he signed up, ordered a bunch of containers. They came, ordered the trailer to move the containers. That did not come for a very long time, did finally come. He called me because it came, but it still didn't come with the papers. I guess they got held up in customs somehow. So he's got containers that he can't move, a trailer that he can't get street legal because he doesn't have the paperwork. So he can't make any money off of this side business. In the meantime, he's been paying the franchisor every month. And this is almost a year now that this has been going on. So what is this? Does he really have to keep upholding this contract? Does he have to keep paying every month for a benefit that he's not receiving? And the answer is no. I mean, the answer is they're not providing their side of the agreement. So that's what's called a breach of contract. And you can have a breach of contract for a lot of different reasons. Someone doesn't pay, someone doesn't provide the service they were saying. In this situation, they weren't providing the paperwork to the trailer, so the trailer was actually useful. So he wasn't making a dime off of this business investment that he made. So what that is that's last on my list here, called frustration of purpose. So that's kind of like, the contract might be great. The contract is perfect. I actually read the contract. He read it too before he signed it. Ironclad, covers everything. The agreement's fine. The problem is the company never delivered on their side of it. So the purpose of the contract was for him to be able to use these containers to expand his business. The purpose of the contract was frustrated. It's not happening. So for that reason, he's negotiating with them now to try to figure it out, because really it's solvable. The fact is that he's just been paying for so long and not getting any benefit. But that's called frustration of purpose. As I said, sometimes it's the payment terms weren't met. Sometimes it's warranties or guarantees weren't met. Sometimes there's a bankruptcy and one side or the other defaults because of that. So there's a lot of reasons why a breach can happen. And the best thing to do is have some wording in there about what happens when that happens. Because if there's a breach of contract, what you want is you want a certain amount of time to what's called cure the breach. So for example, I don't know, let's say in his case, his credit, he has the payments coming off of his credit card and his credit card got stolen. So he canceled it and the payment didn't come through. So they would send him a breach of contract because for non-payment. What he needs is he needs something in that contract that says he has 10 days to cure. They have to give him notice, and then he has 10 days, 5 days, 20 days, whatever it is, but time to cure the breach. So in his situation, it's an easy fix. Get the new credit card, get the payment method set up again. It's you want to give yourself and the other party time to fix whatever's wrong. So that's an important part of a contract, and something to know about breach of contract, which is if somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, look in the contract and see how much time they have to fix it. Usually you have to give them written notice, and then the time starts clicking from there. So that's an important piece of a breach of contract. The other thing I wanted to touch on, just because we're coming out of this pandemic, is force majeure clauses. Perhaps you've heard of these. These are the clauses that say, you know, acts of God happen so that this contract would either be, you know, sometimes they're canceled, sometimes they're void, sometimes you just have more time to pay on it. They can be worded very differently, but it has something to do with acts of God. And this is like floods, hurricanes, war. There's like a whole list of different things that could be included under this like acts of God provision. But what it does is it's good, generally speaking, because it gives the parties a little bit of time to adjust if something outside of their control is happening. So this isn't like the cost of paper went up, so I wasn't able to print your thing. This is like there is no paper because the shipping containers sunk, so there's just no paper being delivered. So it's something outside, like really outside of the control of either party in this contract. So the pandemic, a lot of questions have come up about whether or not the pandemic is included in force majeure clauses. And because all of these clauses are worded differently for different contracts, and many contracts don't have them at all, some of them do include pandemic occurrences and some of them don't. So when it comes to, you know, using the pandemic, I don't want to call it an excuse because obviously it's a lot more than that. It affected a lot of people in a lot of different ways, but it could be a reason why you're late on payments, why you couldn't deliver services. You know, if you were a house cleaner and it's the pandemic and we're on lockdown, then you can't go to people's houses and clean. You just can't. So if you have a contract with someone to clean every Tuesday at 3 o'clock and you don't show, you know, that isn't necessarily your fault. So what happens is we're all trying to be humans here, and we're all trying to make things work. So there are pieces of contracts that you can add, or clauses in contracts that you can add to make sure that if something does go awry, we have a plan. It's like we have a plan for how do we deal with that. Okay, so if there's another pandemic and I can't come and clean your home at 3 o'clock when I'm supposed to, I have it in there that I can make it up the next week, or I can skip charging you for that week, or maybe we renegotiate the contract after the event is over, or something, whatever it might be that would work best for you. But because we're talking a little bit about the pandemic in these talks, I wanted to bring that up because there have been a lot of questions about those clauses and what they mean, if they are helpful or not helpful. And in some cases they can be. In other cases, they kind of exclude social things like the pandemic. So that's a little bit about breach of contract. Let's see if you guys have any questions about that.
We do have a couple of questions here, Janelle. Someone asked, what if you have a breach of contract, but the contract ends in 2 months, or it's a short-term contract?
Then it's up to you. If you are the one breaching, obviously it's going to probably be a different story than if the other party is. But if it is not a long-term contract, or most of it's been fulfilled and maybe there's just a little piece missing, I mean, it really depends on the situation. But if you are the one that has been defaulted on and you need whatever the services are for that last 2 months, then absolutely you should either get them or you should get the proportional money returned to you. And that's another thing, just in general, contracts. If they do go wrong, there's really only 2 things you can do. You can try to get the thing that is the the thing that went wrong in the contract. So the service or the product or the thing, or you can get money back for it. But there's not really, there's not a lot of creativity in there. It's either we figure out how to get you the product or service that you're trying to achieve with the contract, or we can give money back. But there's not a lot else you can do. So when you think about if you have to breach on a contract, which if you have to, I would say bring it up to them first so they don't have to go after you and try to negotiate up front. But if someone is breaching on your contract, there's really, you can ask them to perform the service or provide the good or ask for your money back. But those are really the only solutions. We have some other questions?
Yeah, and then if you could just clarify, if the person still isn't responding to you, like if they're not giving you your money back or completing it after that breach of contract, would that end up going to court, or what would the next step be?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I usually tell my clients to reach out first on their own behalf, and then I will step in, and I would say probably 75% of the time I will get a response, but there's still 25% of the time that they just don't respond. And sometimes it's because they are going bankrupt or something really bad is happening to them. But sometimes it's just they figure, well, eventually you'll give up and go away. So they'll just ignore it. In the case of them ignoring it, legal action in terms of going to court is probably the only thing you can do. Now, if it's only a small amount you're looking for, it can be a small claims court situation, and that's pretty straightforward and not very expensive. But if it is something that's a bit more expensive, then you're going to have to go through the system, and it's not designed to be efficient. But sometimes just filing the threat of legal action, putting together the paperwork and filing with the court will get people moving. So those are the tools that we have. Unfortunately, I can't go show up at their doorstep. Now, well, let me take that back. If they have something of yours, you can get the police to go and retrieve it for you or with you. So there are a few other things you can do. And there's also, like in the situation of trade secrets, if someone's taking your trade secret, you can go to court and ask for an injunction. An injunction is just basically the judge in the court says that whatever they're doing, they must stop. Whether or not they actually stop is another story, but if they don't stop, they can be thrown in jail. So most people don't want to be thrown in jail. So that's a pretty good way to get them listening. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that was great. I love the details there. Someone said, is something like Legalzoom good? Do you know what Legalzoom is?
Yeah, so I have to plead the fifth with Legalzoom. I love the idea of it being easy for startups to get the templates that they can use to start. The unfortunate thing about Legalzoom is that the templates are very general. So trying to take a template and make it work for your business is difficult, and it often ends up backfiring. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's, do you want to take that chance is what you have to ask yourself. But I have fixed a lot of Legalzoom problems for people, even with operating agreements and entity formation things. They have the laws wrong in there. They have, I had one client who had like a Missouri type of document. I'm like, you're Pennsylvania. Why do you have this? And I'm like, oh, I got it off of Legalzoom. So I love the idea of it, but I would not recommend that you go there because it ends up being more expensive than it purports to be, from what I hear, and you're not getting a quality product. So it's a lot of money for the quality that you're spending, where you can find a small business attorney that's affordable. And yeah, you might end up spending a little bit more, but you are going to have peace of mind, like hands down. I think it's going to be, it's your choice, obviously, how much risk you're comfortable with, but you don't have to use a big city attorney at like $500, $600 an hour. I guess that's what I'm saying. Go the middle road if you can. That would be my recommendation.
All right, awesome. And then someone else asked, do you know where they can find like contract templates online by any chance?
So I would not, even if I did know, I would not be able to say where to go for malpractice reasons. I
Yep,
can't recommend
understood.
that I can't recommend that you Google and find templates online and use them.
All right.
So,
That was all the questions for now, so we can continue on.
great. So I've got one more piece for you guys, and this is when to review contracts and when to kind of check them out. So this is the last question, I promise. Business owners should evaluate their contracts and agreements every year. True or false? And just to clarify, contracts and agreements, those two words mean the same thing. So I use them interchangeably.
We have a lot of people saying true, and one person said depends.
So I actually marked this one as false, but I think everyone is on the right track here, because this is what the handout looks like. I don't know if you guys got it yet or if that's coming out in a couple of days, but this is what you're going to get from me. And it's a contract organizer. I have a version of this that's much more complicated, but this is a good starting point. So why is the answer false? The answer is false because it depends. It depends on the contract. So what you want to know is, when does each contract need to be looked at? Every year might be good for one contract, might not be good for another. So let's take one extreme. Lease agreements, commercial leases. Probably a lot of you lease commercial space. Those contracts are often 5 years in length, 10 years in length. Some are 2, some are 3, they're all over the place. But let's say it's 5 years in length. Do you need to look at that contract every year? No, you don't need to look at that contract every year. You should know, though, when it's getting to the end, what does it say about renewals? Sometimes you have to negotiate renewals 3 months before the contract ends. Sometimes it's 6 months before the contract ends. Sometimes the contract has an automatic renewal. So if you don't say anything, you're now locked into another 5 years. And maybe you were thinking about, changing spaces. So it depends. I work with my clients, a lot of them, not all of them, but I work with a lot of them via a subscription basis. And it's a quarterly subscription. So they pay quarterly, and we do a certain amount of work in that quarter. And then we also have all of our strategy sessions and our client communications are included in that one set price. So that's quarterly. My clients pay in advance for each quarter. And if they want to cancel, I ask them for 30 days notice before the next quarter. So if they're getting ready to cancel, or they have to move on, or maybe they want to change service, something like that, they need 30 days before the next quarter. So that would be a good time to look at that agreement with me, just to know that, okay, this renews every quarter. Other programs are every month. Some things are every year. So the key is to know which contracts are which. So this organizer is great to get your contracts organized and to make sure you know what type of contracts you even have for your business. But B, when do they need to be reviewed? So that, if you're not worried about looking at your lease every year, because you don't have to look at it every year. So why have that on your mind? Just write it down and then you'll know. But this is a little handy way to kind of list out what your contracts are. So the first thing I have here is client-facing contracts. So this would be if you are selling products, what that looks like. If you have an online service, you've got terms and conditions. Sometimes you have subscriptions for online services. If it's an in-person service, you might have some kind of agreement. I know I've been working with a lot of speakers and coaches and things like that lately. So they've got coaching agreements. They've got speaking agreements for when they go speak to larger groups. So that's all client-facing Those are your agreements that you're having your clients sign with your terms in them. Then there's vendor contracts. Those are usually coming from the people supplying you with the raw materials that you need to create your business. So if you're in manufacturing, these are, the raw materials, like I said. If you are an online business of sorts, it might be the, what's the word I'm looking for? The software as a solution companies that you are using their platforms to deliver your products. It could be, what else am I thinking of? If you're, like moving things or in trucking or whatever, it could be any of those service parts or service type of contracts with your providers in that sense. Then I've got employees. If you have employees, you might have employee contracts with them. You might not, but you should at least have non-disclosure type agreements or an employee handbook. But that would fall in here. If you have an employee agreement that renews every year, just have that in there so so you don't forget about it. Next on this list is real estate. And I know it's really tiny on the screen, so I'm just reading it out. Real estate is, again, your actual real estate. It could also be if you have a commercial lease, but it could also be if you're in the real estate industry, you might be leasing to other people. So you might have those agreements listed under here as well. And it would be very important for you to know when each of those are renewing, because you probably want to see if you can increase the rates or work things out in that sense. And then the last thing I have on here is independent contractors. So when you're working with independent contractors, which I know a lot of small businesses start that way, and that's great, but you have to be very clear as to what they're providing, how you're paying them, especially if they're project-based, what are the conditions of payment, but also who owns the work product. So if an independent contractor does work for you, you want to make sure that you own whatever that work is. So if something goes wrong with them or the relationship isn't working out, you own all of the work that you paid for them to do. If that's not clear, then it's very easy to get in an argument on that. And I don't want to see that happen to any of you guys. So what I say at the bottom of this form is collect complete signed copies of the above contracts for your attorney to review. And I'm going to focus on the word signed here, because I can't tell you how many clients come to me with their contracts and say, a breach is happening or a renewal is about to happen and I want to change some of the terms, and they don't have signed copies of their agreements. So make sure you keep in a safe place a signed copy of every agreement that you sign. And by safe place, it doesn't have to be a physical lockbox, but it can be. But make sure you've got a folder somewhere where you keep all of this. If it's online, make sure it's protected well enough, but make sure it's there and you have an actual signed copy and you kept it so that you have it for reference. And then once you have this list together, we do reviews for clients where we'll go through and kind of see where they're at with their contracts, see if it's ready, if they're ready to be updated, or if they're good. I do a lot of reviews for people that are like, hey, I wrote this contract. Will you take a look at it and tell me how it is? Absolutely. So what this worksheet is sort of designed to do is to help you kind of get all of that information together and get it ready to hand over to an attorney to take a look at it, if that's what you're looking for. And if not, it's just a great chart to keep everything together for your own organizational benefit. But that's what I've got for you guys today. If there's any other questions, let's dig into those. But that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Janelle. We have some people in the chat saying they really enjoyed this session. A lot of really great information here. So I do want to thank you for your time today, and also thank everyone on the call for their time as well. Hope this was valuable to all of you. And I put a link to our survey in the chat. So some of you might know, if you've been on our sessions before, that we do have to fill out a 4-question survey for all of our webinars to continue to provide these great programs to you. Like I said, only 4 questions. So if you can just let us know, what you liked, maybe what you didn't like, any comments, maybe what other workshops you'd like to see in the future, especially in the legal space, that would be great to hear, because that'll inform our programming going forward. With that said, I think we just have one question here in the chat. So someone said, if your business entity is an LLC or a corporation, should contracts be signed with reference to your role as the representative of the entity, such as, example, managing partner of ABC LLC?
Yes, absolutely. That's an easy one.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
what happens, and I'll really quickly just share, and most people know this, but you and your entity, you want to divide. And that's why we have LLCs and corporations, so that you on your bank accounts and your house and your assets are one separate thing from your business. So when you are signing contracts for your business, you're not actually signing as yourself as a person, you're signing as whatever your role is in that organization. So always sign as, whatever your name is, and then your title of the company. Great question.
All right. Great. That was everyone that had questions. So great timing here. We fit that right into a little less than an hour. Thank you once again, Janelle. And we are doing the legal considerations series with her once a month through September. So feel free to look forward. I think we have at least the July date up if you want to register for that. The August one will be going up soon. And you'll get to see some more great tips and tricks from Janelle and Snyder Law. All right. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.